In today's video, I'll be sharing with you 5 super simple modifications that you can do to your Jeep Wrangler TJ that will definitely help improve your experiences you have on or off-road in your Jeep. Hi there, welcome back to ATEM Off-Road. Dustin here, hope everyone's having a good day. So we're gonna start off with the first mod, let's get to it. Now this first modification is going to be a hand throttle kit by TerraFlex. The kit seems of good quality and is super simple to install. I'll start by installing the throttle cable lever on the shifter of my manual transmission. In the kit you'll locate a small rubber grommet. We'll have to oversize the hole, that way it can slip over the shifter, and then we can clamp the throttle lever onto the shifter and set up our cables. I'll start by feeding one end of the cable through the lever and then installing the cable's sheathing or protector, and then feeding the cable and protector through the rubber boot of the shifter leading up to the firewall under the dash. I'll drill a hole, that way the cable can be fed through this rubber grommet and go to the other side and feed the cables through. To gain access to the throttle body linkage, I had to remove the upper intake and ducting. I'll start by marking and drilling a hole, that way we can mount the small 90-degree bracket to the bracketry for the throttle body linkage. Then we'll add the barrel nut and size our sheathing to length. I'm going to use my cutoff wheel with a grinder, and it worked out pretty good. Next, we'll need to make a permanent loop on the cable, that way we can attach it to the throttle body linkage. I'll use this small crimp that comes in the kit, make my loop, and then crimp it down secure, nice and tight. Then we'll cut off the excess cable and slip the cable's loop over the throttle body linkage and attach the cotter pin. This cotter pin will secure the cable from falling off the throttle body linkage. Then you may have to make some adjustments on your barrel nut to eliminate or reduce any slack in the throttle cable, and there you have it. We have a nice throttle control cable on the manual shifter of the Jeep. Now recently I've just gotten back from the Rubicon Trail, and I could say that I use this hand throttle about 50% of the time. And let me say, it was night and day from other trails I've done in the past, especially on obstacles that are pretty rough and have steep inclines like the Granite Bowl and Cadillac Hill. Now I can pretty much gear down, set an idle, engage the clutch, and simply crawl through obstacles and steep inclines. With my Jeep being numerically low on the crawl ratio side, probably one of my favorite mods that I interact with on the trail the most on my Jeep. Now for this second modification, it is definitely going to be one that is overlooked, but will definitely help improve the steering and handling of your Jeep, especially if you have a 1-inch or larger body lift. And that is going to be a 1-inch steering column shaft riser bracket. Now I have a 1-inch body lift, so I want to lift the bracket up 1 inch. So depending on the body lift that you have, you'll want to match that with the bracketry on your steering column shaft. And as you can see, the before and after, the angles at these U-joints are very aggressive. So by rising the bracket the same amount as your body lift, you bring those angles back to a factory geometry, help tighten up the steering. Now there are several manufacturers for this bracketry. You can get one from Advanced Adapters. I believe Genrite sells them, but I ended up just modifying the bracket myself. The bracket is super simple to remove. It's a couple bolts and 2 10mm nuts, and then I just cut in a specific spot, took a 1-inch piece of flat stock and welded everything back together, and then got it installed. So whether you're doing a V8 swap or just need a little bit of body lift to clear some high clearance skid plates, you may want to definitely consider rising up the steering column back to factory geometry. Now for this next modification, it is also going to be attributed to the steering, but this time it's going to be bracing up the steering box on this frame. Now over time, the steering box, especially with larger tires, those bolts and the frame can kind of work its way loose, have a lot of fatigue in the material and start cracking the frame. So what we're going to do is add this brace by Rough Country. Now Rough Country is not the only one who makes these braces. I've been looking at ones from Genrite and Rugged Ridge. They all are very similar in design and they're very simple to install. Now on mine in particular, I did have to take a grinder and kind of shave down the material so the U-bolt would be able to cover over the housing of the steering box, and then proceeded to do a fit up installation just to see where the holes are for bolting the brace to the frame. Drilled the holes and then painted those to prevent rust as well. Overall, I thought the powder coated finish looked really good, and I think that it's going to definitely help to reduce fatigue on the frame and the box itself and provide that added strength for running these larger tires. This brace was just under $60 and it has a pretty decent powder coated finish, and it just adds that a little bit of peace of mind that you need when you're out there on the trail. Now this next modification is also dealing with the steering. It's this heavy duty steering box skid plate, and overall it's a pretty solid plate. I actually bought one from Terraflex that was double the price, that didn't even match up to the factory bumper. So in this case, this one should match up to fairly any bumper that you have, as long as you're not too modified in this area. And having a heavy duty steering box skid plate will just give you that added peace of mind while you're approaching those steep obstacles on off-road or on the trail. Now for the last couple of modifications, it's going to be the front of the Jeep. I recently got the front bumper on and I was looking at the old fog lights that I had on this bumper and they were kind of just worn out, looking kind of crusty. So I reached out to a company called Supre. They're the makers of these indicator, the TJ indicator lights that you guys have been asking me about. And I asked them what they would recommend for some front fog or flood lights, and they recommended these ones that I have here. Now these are Supre's 5-inch pod lights. They're multifunctional fog and flood lights with their side shooter LED light bars, which make these really bright. They produce 6500K bright white lights with over 16,000 lumens. It's a 50-watt light that has a pretty hefty heat sink on the back, and they're also waterproof IP67 rated. They come with stainless steel hardware and 45-degree mounts. Now to wire these up is going to be pretty straightforward. There's 3 wires, one for the ground, one for the fog, and one for the floodlights. Here I am just bench testing them to test which wire is which, and then I'll wire them into the existing harness that I've already set up for my front fog lights on the Jeep. Then I'll mount them to my front bumper and get the bumper installed. As you can see here, they produce a lot of light. So I then decided to take the Jeep out and see actually how much light these produce on the road and compare them to my headlights. And it turns out that these lights actually produce more light than my headlights. Now the center lights you see on the ground, those are the fog lights, and all the other light around is the lights that are scattered from the floodlights. Now these lights are a bit more than the $60 budget I had talked about earlier in the video, but Supre has a website and they're also found a store on Amazon that you can check out. These are the 5-inch lights and I really do think they are worth it. My next set I want to get for the other Jeep are going to be in the yellow. They didn't have them at the time. They only had them in the 7-inch, which were a little bit too big for my liking, but overall I really like these lights and I can't wait to get them off-road. If you're in a situation on an obstacle, you need a tug or a pull, maybe you're on the side of the road, whatever it is, you want to make sure you have some heavy duty recovery points on the front of your bumper. With that, I added these tow hooks that are rated for 10,000 pounds. I can simply hook on a soft shackle onto them. They're very soft and rounded on all corners. Now I did have to lengthen the bolts to secure them over the winch plate. Got them really nicely secured, and now we have a really secure point to recover from on the front of this Jeep. So if you are using a factory bumper, definitely consider these. They're very inexpensive and they work great for recovery. Now for this next modification I wanted to add to this video is adding limit straps to the rear axle of my Jeep. Now these limit straps come in multiple different sizes and they're rated for about 10,000 pounds. They have these chromoly ends with holes so you can bolt them. Now one of the biggest benefits to having limit straps is while limiting droop, you also protect your shocks from pulling out of the frame, as well as helping prevent the springs from jumping out of the spring perches. Now on my last off-road trip up to the Rubicon, I could definitely tell that these limit straps performed well while tackling some of these challenges. Overall, the body roll on this 4-inch lift, it was very minimal, and I felt like I had really good or consistent traction throughout a lot of these challenges. I didn't break a shock or bind or bust a U-joint on the rear drive shaft, so I was really happy with the outcome. Now if you're interested in a full, complete, detailed video on how to install these limit straps and what to look for, check out the recent Dana 44 installation video I did a couple months back, and you can get all the details there. If you are interested in anything that I've kind of listed in this video, check out the links in the description box below, where I always list all the links. And if you do end up buying something, it does help out the channel. I do get a small commission, which I really appreciate you guys supporting the channel and making those purchases. So thank you. If you guys like this content, give me a thumbs up. Definitely subscribe if you're a new subscriber or coming back to the channel, and we will see you guys on the next video. Have a good day. Peace out.